The West Tigers podcast is brought to you by the West Tigers Podcast Forum. Have your say on anything to do with the West Tigers, westtigerspodcast.com.au. It's the West Tigers podcast. Unfortunately, not a post-victory edition. Gary and Steve are here, boys. I was starting to get used to doing post-victory editions of the West Tigers podcast, but a 26-24 loss to the Warriors, going down for the second time this year by 2 points, and at Campbelltown, but very different games. How are we with one-word submissions for that game? Steve, what comes to mind for you when we talk about one word to describe that Sunday night performance?
Well, I heard a number of one words at the end of the game, but I don't think any of them. I don't think any of them were worth repeating. And
just, four-letter one words.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But my one word is collision, and we just didn't win the collision. And I mentioned collision and not ruck because you've got to win the collision before you win the ruck.
Yeah.
And we couldn't win the collision, and it was obvious from the fifth tackle of their first set when they kicked it downfield and pushed poor old Dream back 10 metres, totally legally, into the in goal and forced a dropout. And it just didn't change. Look, there's a lot of good stuff out of the game that we'll talk about. And it's not, it's not slit your wrist stuff, that's for sure, and we'll get to it. But we need to win the collision if we're going to have any hope of competing in this competition. And we can't do it, especially in the first 25 minutes, but we didn't do it all game the other night.
Gary, what have you got for us?
Yeah, I'm going to go with needed. I think that's a game we really needed to win. It's the second 2-point loss down at Campbelltown. And to come away losing both of those in games I think we should have won, against teams we should beat. And for me, we needed to get that over the line somehow last night. And I still think there's lots of positives to come out of last night. But that's a game we needed to get over the line. But I do have to agree, and I just want to pick up on Steve's collision. That first 20 minutes, I think I've said it a number of times now, we're going to struggle to win that collision in the first 20 minutes all season. I feel our stronger props get better as the game goes on. I feel Terrell May is having a fantastic season, but he gets a lot stronger as the game goes on. And what happened last night is we usually start to get that impact and start to win that collision around the 20-25 minute mark.
Yeah.
When we make the change of Hunt and Bird. Now, Bird was already out on the field playing in the centres last night. So we lost his impact, and I think that had a big effect on the game. And when Hunt did get out there, we didn't have much ball for that 20 minutes he was out on the field. And I think that really hurt us as well. I think he ended up with stats of about 3 hit-ups for 30 metres last night, which is very different to what we've seen from him. I think that was a big part of the game. Sorry to jump in and keep going on that.
Collision and needed. I thought for a second there, Gary, you were saying that was the loss that we needed to have, and I was trying to work out what the context of that was going to be.
Going too.
Yeah.
Let's have a game we needed to win.
Yes, which is pretty much every game. Let's have a look at the one-word submissions from the West Tigers podcast forum. Thanks to everybody that left their submissions. Some people taking a little bit of liberty with one word, like Boon Boon. He's gone for 2. Injury crisis. Yeah, that's about right. Snake's word was roster. We have no depth, and this will leave us in the bottom 4 at the end of the season. JH98's one word was unlucky. Plunder Monkey went for gutsy. There was a couple of people with gutsy. Tigertown SFS trending, saying that the results are consistent with the trends that we've seen over the first month of the competition. Tristo's word was camp. The Warriors were camping on our play the ball, which helped or made us be camped in our own end. Lorenzo's word was injuries. Tiger Tun's word was frustrating. Tiger Tragic 56, opportunities lost. Mike's one word is work in progress. I like that. Tigersman's word was effort. Dirty Red said Tigers. No other club loses a game like that. I think that's pretty right. Teddy S's word was gritty as well. And LFC Tiger, now I stole LFC Tiger's word. It was from a comment that they made in the first half, and the word that stood out in that post on the podcast forum was monstered. And I think that's a good word. My words, I have had to revert back to physicality because it's all in line with what we've already spoken about in the first few minutes of the podcast. I've also got mixed bag because it's a game that's left me not exactly sure if I should have liked that game or not. I didn't like the result, but there were some things in it that I did like. And gritty came up as well, but it exposed our vulnerabilities. Steve, when the season started, we all went, look, we're okay so long as a few things go our way. And the bounce of the ball came our way a few times against the Dolphins, and we were a little bit lucky with injuries that day. But our vulnerabilities were a little bit exposed in that game, including the point that you've already made about the collision. We just don't have that kind of game.
Yeah, look, I don't think there was anything that came out of that game that we didn't already know. All right, like our depth was tested, and what the unfortunate events that led to that game would have tested any club. Like when you lose a player 5 minutes before kickoff, and then you lose a player, what was it, 25 or 30 into the game.
Yeah, about 25. Yeah.
And then, you know, and I'm not blaming the refereeing because you've got to overcome it, but it was one of the most pathetic officiating performances I've ever seen. When you put all that together, it was we actually did okay. But to get back to my point, there's nothing there that we didn't already know. We know our depth is weak, and it was tested, and we struggled. We knew that. We know that we have to slow the ruck to win football games, and you know I don't know what the difference is between us and the Storm. I don't know why the Storm can slow the ruck so effectively and not get pinged. Yet we try to do it and we get pinged first tackle every time, second tackle in the set every time. I don't get it. I don't understand. You know, they must be so much better at it than us, and maybe we're not doing it enough at training. I honestly don't know the answer. But we really need to win the collision, and that means stop their post-contact meters and make contact meters ourselves and not fall off one-on-one tackles, especially in the middle, which we're doing all the time. And then we've got to get opposition's forwards in particular on their backs, on the ground and on their backs, and then stay on them for as long as you can, as long as the ref will allow it to slow it down. Because what we're finding is our middles are not fast enough to defend against a fast attacking team. They just come at us. We're out of position. When we don't get two markers at the ruck quite often, which is a problem. It's problematic for ruck defence, and our forwards are on the back foot, which means they can't move laterally and they can't stop a big forward in their tracks. So they're the two concerns that I wrote down. You know, depth and slowing the ruck. But we knew it. We knew it before, but we just got found out. We weren't able to combat our own weaknesses in the game. The two games we won, we were able to do that.
And I think a big part of not being able to do that last night, and I don't want to make excuses because I think that's a game we still should have won, but the wet weather hurt us a fair bit. Yeah. It meant it was a much more through the middle game, and
which definitely was advantageous to the Warriors, right?
100%.
Like, is there a team you'd want to play less in those conditions than the Warriors? Really?
Correct. And they're the team that has the big forwards that are really hard to dominate in the ruck. Yeah. So you get a wet weather game, which also does make defence harder. It makes that first contact harder in defence because your footing's not as sure as it usually is. Now, that's not to make excuses. That game was there to be won last night, despite all those things going against us, and we weren't able to come away with that victory. Despite the injuries we had, despite the HIAs we had, despite Adam Dewey going off at half-time, going off in the warm-up. that's still a game we should have won, despite all those things going against us last night, Steve. Like, we put ourselves in a position to win that game, and through poor options, ill discipline, and probably a halfback getting injured, we were unable to finish that game off. It's still a game we should have finished off, and that's what's disappointing for me. I think it's the same as that Knights game. There was lots of things that went against us in that Knights game, but we put ourselves in a position where we could have and should have won that game. And the same thing happened last night, and we weren't able to do it again, which is a history at our club.
Yeah, it is. And I don't like harping back to last year. I actually like the way Benji gets in press conferences now and just says, I'm not talking about last year. And, we should perhaps do the same. But, there are some similarities coming across from last year to this year. And it's those key moments or those brain fades, I suppose. And we've talked about brain fades from an individual, different individuals, but I think you can look at it from a team perspective. Like, there's just these little moments in games that where we don't ice the cake, we just don't quite get it right.
That line that Toll ran to pull back the Buller try, you just can't make that mistake. It's that attention to detail. You can't hit that outside shoulder. You have to hit the inside shoulder. And you have to continue through the line, and he did neither. And that cost us a try.
That was the turning point in the game.
Yeah, I think the bigger one was May dropping the ball over the line from a couple of centimetres. If he gets that ball down, makes it 30 to 8. Yeah, I think we run away with the game at that point. But he didn't get it down. So there was lots of those little moments, and we've seen lots of those little moments over the past couple of years. And you're right, that kick at the end, where Taruva catches the ball flying down the wing, that he has to attempt that pass. It's a tough pass. I would much rather him miss it because it didn't matter because we didn't have a dummy half there when he got up to play the ball anyway. So it's those little attention to detail things that have come back to bite us in that game and probably stopped us from getting there. And I do have to mention, and Seyfarth, you can't... that's a nothing penalty. That's a nothing tackle. That contact was nothing. But you can't put yourself in that position. You've got to lower your body. You've got to put yourself in a position that you're hitting around that chest mark or lower. You can't stand upright going into that tackle because anytime you're going upright into tackle now, someone's going to come into contact with your shoulder. If you're just chest grabbing, which is what he did on that tackle, someone's going to come into contact with your shoulder. Their head's going to touch it, and then if they lay down, it's a penalty every day of the week now. And of course, listening to what the NRL has come out and said today, it's a sin bin. So you have to get your technique right on that. And I know it was at the end of the game and he put in a huge effort. You have to position yourself better. You can't put yourself in that position to give away that penalty. Those are the little things that we need to do better to win football games.
So I just want to talk about one other moment in regards to attention to detail. We did really well to come back in and go in at 18-all. We did go in at 18-all, right? At half time. We scored, it was 18-all. We need to come back. We need to come out in the second half. Like we didn't deserve really to be 18-all. They were all over us, as far as getting down the field. So the fact that we played into a huge win, and then still got it to 18-all. We come out in the second half, and in the second minute, right, we didn't get players in the tackle. Right, we didn't get players in the tackle. Our first defender got smashed and was left laying on the ground. Our second defender arrived late and just got in at marker. So we had one marker, and our second marker was still laying on the ground next to the ruck. Right. They got up, played the ball really quickly, and their halves just went bang, 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 straight through the middle, and they scored, I think, in the second or third minute of the second half. And all the momentum that we wrestled back at the end of the first half was lost, and we were on the back foot again. Now, that moment is not more or less important than any other moments that we're talking about. It's just another example of that moment that we just let the game slip. And then we came back again. Right, but that try should never have come about.
Now, I've got in my notes here that it was a soft try, and again, poor at marker, and it goes back to what we were talking about last week in that Redcliffe try, where our markers were not there, I think, from memory. We didn't have anybody at marker, but the few times that we were caught if you just keep with the West Tigers because you've got the momentum and then spear in back behind the markers, you're going to make lots of meters and or score tries. I just wanted to quickly mention, just because I don't want us to get away from that whole collision physicality, the stats. They made the Warriors 2,051 run meters to our 1,558. So they made 25% more, even though possession was pretty close. 654 post-contact meters to our 521. But their average set distance as well, 47 meters to our 38. I mean, you're just never going to be able to win a game, or very rarely going to be able to win a game. And I think it also shows why they've now beaten us 8 times in a row, because they come with the same game plan. Every time it's exactly the same, and they smell blood in the water every time. They ambushed us at the start, and they got the momentum. And I think, as we see week in, week out in the game of rugby league, when you get the momentum, the ball, the decisions, the ball bounces your way, the decisions tend to go your way. It is such a game of momentum. Gary, you've got another point you wanted to make.
Yeah, just on what you said, Joel. With the Warriors, if you can't hold them in the middle, it's very hard to beat them. They've got the big forward pack. They push through the middle. We controlled their offloads, I thought, fairly well last night, but they cut you to pieces with offloads as well. And if you can't control that middle, then you're on the back foot. And we didn't do a good job of that last night. But I think Steve a moment ago raised a point saying it wasn't that one thing that lost us the game. I think that's the point, Steve. It's the fact that we've just gone through 6 or 7 things that we needed to do better. And that's why in a 2-point game, you know what? You do 2 of those things out of the 6 or 7 we just mentioned, and you probably come away with that win. And in all probability, you do one of those things in a 2-point game, you probably come away with the win. We're just not taking enough opportunities. Well, I think we scored enough points last night. You score 24 points in a game, you should win most games. So
especially that game.
Especially that 100%. Game in the wet. So I think we probably did enough with the ball to win that game last night. Defensively, we got let down again. And I'm not one to sit here and bag referees. I don't like doing it at all. I think the better football you play, the better rub you get from the referees. And I firmly believe that. But there were some really tough decisions that went out. Like, when their fullback went down for the hit on the head, Taruva did the exact same thing in the first half, laid down on a hit that wasn't even high, didn't actually have any contact with his head, and he got sent for a HIA. Why didn't that happen in the second half when can't remember, their fullback stayed down after Seyfarth hit him. He stayed on the field for the rest of the game. Yeah, that's who it was. Those sort of little things don't seem to go our way in games. And that needs... That's what hurt me last night in probably the officiating, and it wasn't the referee. It was whoever was doing the HIA assessments. I got that right. Assessments. He should have been off for an assessment, and that didn't happen. And I think any time a player stays down now, the easiest way you get rid of players foxing is they go off for HIA. If they're claiming they got hit in the head, then they need an assessment done. So, and it happened to River last night, and my wife and daughter sitting next to me, and they go, "Oh, he barely got hit. Why is he going off?" Well, he was the one that stayed down, and that's how it's got to be adjudicated all the time.
It's clear that Luai carried that injury in the second half, but I think it was only 3 runs or 4 runs in the entire game, made very few meters, and a couple of. I'm not laying the blame on Luai for this, necessarily, but some of our attacking sets. There was probably 2 or 3 occasions where we just looked like chickens with their heads cut off. There was no structure, no plan. It was just very ad hoc. Do those plays stand out to you guys? Do you remember those? I don't know if it was a case of. My point being, I still think we're a bit clunky in regards to our plays, and maybe that where the performance, Steve, that it was rainy and windy and maybe doesn't lend itself to sort of open attacking plays, but I thought we still looked at times very clunky, and it was down almost to sort of individual brilliance more than set plays and structure that got us the 24 points.
Yeah, I was having this conversation on the way back to the car after the game with a number of people. I was actually talking with Mike as we were walking back, and a whole lot of other blokes kept joining in the conversation, which was nice, and no one was agreeing with me.
Did you agree with Mike in that conversation, Steve?
No, I didn't. No.
Well, luckily you didn't, because I was going to take anything you said next with a grain of salt.
Yeah, but you're not going to like my assessment either. So that by default makes you agreeing with Mike. I'm still not convinced with Jerome Luai as far as stepping up to lead the team round the paddock. That could be grossly unfair. I think his presence out there has had a huge impact on the team, and I'm still yet to see it consistently from him, whether he's got a Tigers jersey on or a Panthers jersey on. I'm yet to see him take a game by the scruff of the neck and make it his own and control it and own it as your marquee signing in the halves needs to do. Fainu was like Galvin was doing what he does always and jumping in, but Fainu was playing a lot of first receiver last night as well. Now I don't know when Luai got injured, and I might be being grossly unfair because he might have got injured really early and he might have been incapacitated, and we don't know that. Okay, but his reluctance to get in there and lead the team and lead those younger guys like Fainu and Galvin specifically is starting to worry me a little bit.
Game management. He's got the class. He has some lovely touches, lovely little kicks. But in terms of, I agree, taking the game by the scruff of the neck, and that's primarily what the challenge was coming to the West Tigers, was to be that man, Gary.
Yeah, I think you are being a little unfair. I think he actually does quite a good job of getting the side around the park. The difference at the moment is a lot of that's off the ball. So there's a lot of directing going on and getting players to go to the right spots and being in the right spots, but he's doing it off the ball. I do want to see him engaging the line a little bit more.
I think that's fair, Gary. That point you just made is fair, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he's engaging the line enough. And there was also, I can't remember what it was, there was also a really nice kick he put in to get a repeat set.
In the first half.
He needs to do that a little bit more consistently. I think he's taking his role at the moment with the ball as creating space for his outside man. So I don't think he's necessarily running to be throwing that last pass or that try assist at the moment. I think he's trying to hold up the defensive line and create more space out wide for Galvin most of the time. So I do think that's a little bit harsh, but I do want to see him take a game and do that Nathan Cleary role where he just pulls the side back into a match and wins the game.
So I just remember, and like the expectations might be too great, right? And it's very early in the season. And I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that there was a lot of positives out of that game too. Like the fact we kept coming back despite everything going against us was amazing.
Yeah.
But I just remember watching Cameron Smith play football. And I know he was a hooker, he wasn't a halfback, but you just knew the Storm would get in a position and they just weren't going to lose a game, right? And they'd only get 4 points ahead and they'd defend it for 20 minutes because he would just put that team into different positions, whatever position he wanted them in, and then would drive a kick down to the corner. They'd get a great chase and they'd defend, and, so it's not just Cameron Smith, but he was orchestrating the whole thing. And you just knew the opposition weren't going to come home. You just knew it. And I suppose I want to see that from our marquee player. I take your point, Gary. It's a good point that, yes, he is off the ball managing. We are looking a lot better, right? We're not getting the field position, but that's not his fault, right? That's we've got to get downfield. I just want to see that. I don't know. I want to see that confidence and that ability that you see for the marquee players, I suppose.
Look, I think he has it. Cameron Smith did that while playing with Test and Origin players. We don't have that yet, so that does help him a little bit. And that's not defendable.
That's a disadvantage.
Not on the field, it wasn't, mate.
No.
But I do think he does need to engage the line a bit more, and I still do. I still don't think we have our block plays right. I think the shape we should be throwing at sides should be a lot better than what we're seeing now. That they had an off season to get those. Melbourne Storm, a player would know exactly where they need to be, what line they're supposed to run, and they'll do it time and time again. We don't seem to have that, and to me that goes back a little bit to coaching, and that's still the question mark I have over Benji Marshall's coaching. And I think if you put any kind of halfback into that role, it makes them difficult if they don't have that shape outside them, and the players aren't consistently hitting where they're supposed to hit. So I think we need to improve those things to allow Jerome Luai to probably do those things you want to see him do. And the other thing I did want to mention that you brought up, Steve, was Latu Fainu going to the first receiver. So he pretty much, when he came on, he came on first at centre when I think it was while Taruva was off for the head knock. But he then moved into playing that traditional lock role that you see Yo play for Penrith, and I thought he did really well with that. Now, Yo's a threat running the ball because he can play like he's a forward, but he can play like a front rower. And if you gave him the ball and told him to run for 150 metres a game, he could grab the ball and run for 150 metres a game. But Latu really impressed me playing in that link role last night because he was a threat with the ball in a different way. He busted through and scored that try, used his acceleration, which was quite impressive for that try, and that was the threat. They started to slide off him, and he went straight through the middle. Next game that he plays in that role, the defence isn't going to slide off him as quick, and that's going to hold up the defence and create more room for the players out the back. So I actually really liked him in that role, and I'd like to see him get a little bit more time in that role. He'll be playing halfback this week, but after Luai's back, I would like to see him get out on the field and play that extra ball player in the middle. I thought he did really well at that last night, and it allows us to push our halves a little wider. Because even Penrith does that. Nathan Cleary gets a little bit wider because they have Yo playing in that link role in the middle. So I think that's really important to the way we look like we want to play football. So that was very impressive for me last night.
You've probably answered my question. I was going to ask both of you guys. You know, like Benji said, I think it was in the press conference. He said that Latu's too good for reserve grade.
Far too good.
And he's like, you can't stick him at 18th man all season. He's never going to play a game of footy. So, what do you think, Joel? Like Gary, are you suggesting that he comes onto the bench for Sione, and then 12 goes into the prop rotation, and Fainu
it's hard to carry both TDS and Latu on the bench, I think.
You said, sorry, I missed that. You would or you wouldn't?
It's really hard to carry both TDS and Latu on the bench.
Yeah, so what's the answer? Because what Appy and Talon De Silva are doing is working, right? That's a really important interchange to have to protect Appy.
And needed.
It's needed, and it's not just protecting Appy anymore. It's giving us great impact with De Silva. So what's the makeup of the team then? If we're going to try to get Latu Fainu in there,
I'm sure it's keeping Benji up at night trying to work that out, how you do that. And you've got to be able to have players that have some degree of adaptability, and that's probably where it's not ideal having, as much as it's not an unheard of thing to run with two hookers, and we've got a veteran hooker that definitely gets an advantage from having a rest, but you've got Latu Fainu, who was perfect for last night, where you ran him in a couple of different positions. I really don't know what the answer is. And we've got to keep developing him as it's a terrible thing to say because he's a better player than that, but as our plan B, as our backup, and running him at 18th man is not doing him or us any good. And one last thing, if you were, I don't know, Cronulla, let's say, just pulling that out of the air because they're so strong with their middles and with their yardage, you could probably do it. You could probably have, but when we're struggling to have that impact and we don't have a lot of thrust in our starting team and off our bench, then it's hard to sort of have two utilities or a hooker and a utility there, if that kind of makes sense. And the funny thing is, like, I look at our forward pack and sometimes I think, we've got Jerome May there, and Fanua Pole made 180 metres, and Fainu got injured, but he was playing well, and Seyfarth played pretty well, and Royce Hunt didn't have a great game, and I thought Sione Fainu played pretty well. Like, it just seems we're not a million miles away from where we need us to be, but there's a few issues there with the forwards still, Gary.
For me to answer Steve's question, I think there's two real options that you have if you do want to get him into that 17. You either play him at centre, because I think he could play centre. I think he could make a fist of centre. But the other option is to put Bird out in the centres, and then Latu takes Bird's spot on the bench. And that does give you a bit of versatility, because you could put him out in the centres, or you could put him in that lock role that he kind of played last night. So you could put him in the centres and move Bird into the middle for a little while if you wanted that impact from him in the middle. I'd hate to lose Bird's impact off the bench. I thought we missed that a lot
100%,
last night.
Yeah, and in the middle of the field, we missed him tidying up.
There are a couple of options there to get him in the side, and there's lots of really good halves, especially 5'8" in the past, who started their careers playing in the centres or played representative footballs in the centres, so it's not unheard of. He's pretty quick. He probably lacks a little bit of size for me to play in the centres. But he's got the ball skills. He looked quick last night, at least acceleration. I'd have to see how his defence held up over a game. But that's a possibility if you're desperately trying to get him into that side. So I think there are options there to get him in. But each of those options does have a negative somewhere else as well. So, yeah, and to your point, Joel, about the forward pack, I think our forward pack is so close to being right. I really think we're probably 2 players off being completely set for our forward pack. I think if we could get... Look, I like Pole. I think he's got a future at our club. But I think he's better off coming off the bench at this stage of his career. I don't think his defence is good enough to be our starting prop. So I'd like someone who has decent impact and can play decent minutes as a starter in that prop position. I think we're short there. And that back row, if we could pick up a second rower or a good ball-playing lock forward, then I think our forward pack is pretty much set. And I think it'd be one of the better forward packs in the competition, but we're just that little way off. And it really comes back to that collision we were talking about earlier. Our inability to win that collision in that first 20 minutes is going to be an issue all season. And it's no fault of... I'm not going to sit here and criticise Terrell May, because he was fantastic again last night. I thought he was our best player again last night. Played for 80 minutes in the middle, ran for over 200 metres, 48 tackles and 1 missed.
As did Pole, Gary.
Yeah. Pole played 70-odd minutes.
Yeah.
Ran for around 180 metres, I think it was. But his defence let him down. He missed 7 tackles last night. And you can't have that from your starting prop. Even though he did play big minutes, he missed a lot of those tackles early in the game. So that's where I think his game's being let down at the moment. But back to Terrell May, I just think he's a fantastic footballer, but he doesn't dominate the ruck in that opening 20 minutes.
No, he doesn't. Yeah.
His game gets better the longer it goes.
Yeah.
The more time he spends on the field, his fitness takes over, and he's able to outplay tiring props. That's where his game goes to another level. And if you watch him early, he actually plays a link role early in matches. He'll do a lot of passing in that first 20 minutes to other props, to his halves. And I don't have a big problem with that, because what we're getting from him is amazing. But he doesn't dominate the collision in that opening 20 minutes. It gets better as the game goes on. But just the way he plays, it's just the makeup of the guy. That's going to be an issue for us all year. And that's no criticism on him at all, because he's been our best player by far this season.
If you looked at his stats after 20 minutes, probably no post-contact meters. But if you looked at his stats at the end of the 80, that's where he starts making those post-contact meters, as you say.
And I did think, up until last night, I thought a lot of that was a combination of his fitness and Hunt coming on and providing that impact, and he was playing off the back of... Because if you have a look at... If he hits a ball up after a Hunt hit up, he makes 15 metres on that run because he's pretty quick. And he just gets down the field, and then he's hard to bring down. And he's walking forward in tackles. But last night he was able to do that with Hunt playing poorly. So, he just gets better the longer he's on the field.
See, I don't think anybody in the Warriors team from 1 to 7 outplayed any of our players 1 to 7. It was up front. If you put Mitch Barnett and you put Bunty Afoa, and the way that he always tears it up against us for some reason, and we had the chance to sign him a few years ago, unfortunately, although he is inconsistent. But if you put those two in our team last night, I reckon we probably win that game. So it is the forwards, and I was going to ask the question and go back to Snake's one word, which was roster, saying that we have no depth, and this is going to destroy our season. We've got these spots, Steve. I think you said you could see the 2 or 3 inadequacies, or maybe it was Gary, inadequacies in the team, but you can see the inadequacies in the roster, that once we get to player 18, 19, it starts to fall off a cliff pretty quickly. Like, surely we've got to, I know it's hard because you can't pluck players out of the air, but it's a sort of a shame to see the season slip away when we've got the money and we've got the spots.
Yeah. Look, I get reminded pretty constantly that I'm the one who says we've got to make the 8, and I have said that, and I do believe we have to have that mindset. But that doesn't mean you go out and fill your roster just because you've got the spots, right? Mm-hmm. You've got to get the right players to fill those spots. And if that means waiting for the right person to be available, then we have to do that. As frustrating as that is, and as hard as it is as a fan to sort of cop. Like I've said before on the pod, I don't think we'll ever do any good, and I'm not being disrespectful. While we've got Twal and Seafarth in the same 17, I just don't think we're going to. One of those guys has to be a backup. Who comes into the squad when we've got injuries, and in the 17 when we've got injuries, and will do a job. While they're both starting 17 all the time, we're light on. We know that. We know that our depth's a worry, but we've got to wait to get the right person. I've got all the faith in the world in Richardson that will get the right person and will be able to get them to the club because he's showing that. Now, if that takes till next season, then so be it. We just have to wait. If that means you have to sign them after November and wait 12 months, so be it as well, I suppose. As hard as that would be to cop, but we don't. What we don't want to do is just go and react, because we've done this before. We've reacted. This is how Bud Sullivan came to the club. It was just a gut reaction or a knee-jerk reaction. What I'm trying to say is, and we get the wrong player into the joint. We don't want that.
I hear all the time that our depth is poor. The issue for me, it's not actually our depth that's the problem. It's not depth players we need. We need a couple of starters. And what happens when you get a couple of starters is those guys that we've got starting now that shouldn't be starting, they're your depth players. Mm. That's where the depth comes from. We're short a couple of starters, so our depth players are starting for us.
I agree, yeah.
Alex Seafarth is a depth player. You could have him on the bench in your prop rotation, and he was fairly good last night, but he still gave away 2 really crucial penalties last night and a couple of 6-agains. And if you have guys who really can play the odd good game but have issues in the game as your starters, then that's what the issue is. He's a good depth player in your squad. Alex Twal is a good depth player in your squad, though he's had a pretty good start to the season. Mm. And I thought he was pretty good again last night. His play the ball speed was really fast last night. So if we pick up those couple of starters that we're short of, then your depth starts to look after itself. And so for me, it's really important not for us to go out and sign a whole heap of guys who are just above New South Wales Cup level and put them into our squad, because that doesn't fix our depth. What fixes our depth is going out there and finding those starters that we're short of and pushing some guys down. I think that's really crucial for us to do over the next 12 months.
Mm. I've heard Tyson Frizzell's name thrown around, and that, but there doesn't seem to be. You can't see any. I don't know all of the guys stuck in New South Wales Cup, or what options there might be of guys that have fallen out of favour. But I understand what you're saying, Steve, and I'm not advocating to go and buy guys that just fill holes, but it's just a shame because you can see the inadequacy of the team and you can see the vulnerability and the weakness there, and it just seems a shame because we've got that spine, we've got the ability. And I want to talk about some of the positives out of the game against the Warriors, but there's threats there. We're getting down and we're looking like we can actually score points, but it's just that big part of the game that we're still deficient in, and it's kind of frustrating, as I said right at the start there, because we got the money, we got the spots. Damn it! I wish we could just do it and get them, but nobody's got a magic wand, Gary.
The big thing for me is, did anyone see Terrell May being available at this time last year or this time in October, whenever it was, just before he got released? The players will come. The players will become available. Quality players will become available. And if you go and fill it with rubbish now, then when it comes time that those players have become available, and Steve's right, might not be till the end of the season. And I really can't sit here and fault our recruitment. Like, our squad is still short of where it needs to be. I think everyone is quite clear on that. That's a lot closer than it was
100%.
when we finished playing football last year. And for me, that's the big point, is we're going to have another off-season. I think our best recruitment work has been done over the last couple of off-seasons. And like it does mean that we're probably waiting to fill that second rower spot till next year. We're probably waiting to fill that other starter prop position until next year. If we've got to wait for it, unless someone magically becomes available now, then we have to wait, because it's really important to get it right, because it's starters we need, not depth players.
But it is a little bit like, when you're 10 players short, that's one thing. But when you're 2 players short, it's sort of frustrating. It's like losing by 2 points. Like, this game has affected me and annoyed me more than a 30-point loss last year because it was so close. That's so you can taste it.
And the thing is, we're also going to get into this situation where we're looking for that elite player or two to join the club, but we don't want an elite player to walk out the back door at the same time. So we've got to lock up De Silva, we've got to lock up Galvin, in my opinion, and another couple of elite players or close to elite level players, and then we're talking, right? Then we're pretty close. If a Kit Lily comes through, from the lower grades and starts to show first grade potential, then we are pretty close to that balance.
We're 3 starters short still. We're that prop. We're a second rower, a back rower. I don't care if it's a lock or a second rower. I think we can make do with what we got in one of those positions. And I still think we're an outside back short, which could, if we're lucky, be sorted out in the next week or so. If we get centre sorted out, and if we get Taylor May into the club,
I was going to say, how is Taylor May?
Mate, I hope he's coming to us, because I think last night showed, like, once we get a few injuries, our depth really gets tested. Skelton was missed 100%. Massively last night.
Yep.
Now, for Tape, I'm not going to sit here and say he played a horrible game. He was decent.
Yeah, he did some good things for Tape.
But we went from 180 metres plus to 80 metres coming from that wing position. So that's 100 metres that needs to be made up somewhere else. And that's what we missed massively last night. We've barely mentioned Skelton, but he's out was crucial in that loss last night. We could have really done with him, especially in the wet weather. I think him coming out of one end, it makes it really hard when you have Taruva on one wing, who can bring the ball back well. You have Buller, who has shown he's returning the ball really well this season. He's very dangerous, even last night returning the ball, apart from that first one where he got dragged back in the goal, Steve. And you have Skelton on the other wing. Who do you kick to? Like, that's all 3 are dangerous returning the ball for different reasons.
Yeah.
So we missed him massively last night. And I think last night showed the lack of depth that comes in that back line. We're still one quality outside back short, and hopefully we get that one sorted soon. And then we're down to two positions we really need to fill, unless, as Steve said, we let someone go, and then that goes back. It goes back to 3. But I think 2, if we get centre sorted out next week, is not too bad of a position to be in when you're trying to build your squad.
Yeah, well, at least you called him Fatape and not Fagatu, like I did the other week. But
someone who's not even at the club anymore.
He's a good New South Wales Cup player, and that's about where he should be. There were some positives. I thought Galvin at times showed his class in that try, especially just before half-time. I thought we scrambled well in defence at different times, and I thought that was a difference to what we've seen in the last couple of years. And, I mean, overall, going more macro there, and we don't want to talk about previous years, but if you compare it, last year's team or the year before that, they would have lost that game 30 points to 8 or something like that. Like there is a difference there. We are playing better. There are some good signs. And another positive I thought was the goal kicking, like Talon De Silva's kick from the sideline. That was fantastic. Appy's kicks, like that was really, really good. I was worried about that when Dewey was out, and that made me smile. And with 10 to go, I was smiling, but didn't end up with a smile. But any other positives, guys, other than obviously we've spoken about Terome? I thought Taruva, again, was mostly excellent as well. Yep.
Yeah, no, I would just say that the main thing for me was just that grit, that stickability, sticking in the contest, that we don't compound. Like they scored and we don't compound that with getting them to score again, which has just been typical West Tigers. Like we hit back each time. We had so much. I wrote it down, like pre-game Dewey, Fainu, the positional switches, the bench rotation was all over the shop. The officiating wasn't in our favour, and we actually, despite all that, we hung tough, and we were one good pass or one moment away from clinching that game, and there's no way you could say that about Tigers of the past. So, what was that? Someone said trending. I agree with that. We're still trending in the right direction, despite the fact that we had the spotlight exposed on, shining on our weaknesses this week.
Yeah,
a big positive for me, and I'm sure you guys saw the negativity around his game as I did because you're probably reading the same chat. I thought Buller was quite dangerous last night.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
I thought he probably looked like our most likely to bust through in the entire squad, and he was poking his nose through a number of times, was very unlucky to get through, very safe under the high ball. He probably should have made that tackle on the last try, though. I think that's a tackle he needed to make. But outside of that, I thought he was very good again last night. And should have scored a try. Like, if Toa runs that line right, he scores a try that probably wins us the game. So
can I just say,
I thought he was really strong last night.
Just on that last try of theirs, Gary. I know it's easy to say when you've got a remote control and you fast forward and watching it in slow motion. But Bird and Buller they just didn't work together. Like Buller missed him and then Bird missed him. They were both one-on-one tackles that could have been made. But if they'd actually come in as a pack and sort of realise the other one was there, if you know what I mean. Like if Buller had sort of like slowed him down and let Bird get across, I think that was the better way to do it. But it's easy for me to say it sitting there talking into a computer.
Look, I think the biggest issue in that last try for me was our defensive structures on our left edge defence were all messed up because at that point Luai was actually defending on the wing. So Luai was out on the wing and he pushed whoever was playing for Tape and whoever was playing centre at that point on that side, he'd pushed him, which I think was probably Toa. No, it wasn't Toa. So whoever was playing centre at that point inside him, he'd pushed them in. And that's where our defence broke down on that edge, in my opinion. You actually see Luai jam in really late on the centre and try and shut the ball down, but he just wasn't able to do it.
They were short from the start. From the start of that play, they were one short.
I think that was down to the fact that we had Luai on that wing, and we just didn't mark up properly, and we had guys defending in further than they usually do. But yeah, Bird and Buller, if they had their time again, I'm sure they would believe they should stop that try being scored.
Yeah, one of those games where if you could just go back and replay that one play or have that 30 seconds again. Yeah.
There's like 8 of them, Joel, that we could actually replay and just get, as I said earlier, just get one of them right and we win that game.
Yeah, just get that ball on the ground from Terrell May and we're having a different conversation. Albeit, a lot of what we've discussed, even if we'd lost the game, would have been on blinking away on the radar, in my opinion. I've got a new kind of concept. We've had a little bit of a highlight of it, like a little bit of a preview of it, and that's Richo when he was talking about South. Remember what he said? When I got to South, we were terrible, and then we were poor, and then we were average, and then we were good, and then we were champions. Yeah. So I'm going to call it Richo's meter. So I would suggest we're what we've seen over the first 3 weeks of the competition was we're average, the high side of average. So we're just like average plus. Whereas I think because of the injuries and things, the way and the opposition, we were probably a little bit below average, maybe if you were to grade that performance. I don't think we were poor. I don't think we were terrible. How does that sit with you guys?
Yeah, I'd like last week's game, I'd put on the below side of average.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think it'd be very unfair to call that a poor performance.
Where do you think Eddie would place it, Steve?
I don't know.
What's below terrible? Abysmal.
Eddie Land.
I tend to agree. I actually think most of our games we've played this season, there's been some good things, and there's been some poor things. Even the games we've won, I think the Newcastle game, there were some good things. The defence was quite strong. There were some poor things. The 2 games we won, there were some good things. There were some poor things. For me, that gets us around average. You have a look at our position. We're sitting in 9th.
Which is spot on, pretty much.
Yep, you don't get much more average than 9th. So I really think so far this season we're showing we're average.
I think this next couple of weeks is going to be where Benji earns his money, right? And I agree that we're still, what Gary said, we're still figuring out what his technical proficiency is. Benji, we're still. The jury's still out there. It's still a work in progress. But as far as his man management goes, we've had a lot to be happy about. We're seeing progress. We're seeing a team and a squad that want to play for each other and really want to put in, and are very positive about being a West Tiger. Now, we lost a game that we possibly should have won on the weekend. We're coming up against a team that, if they play well, they are going to test us like you would not believe. They are so fast, the Broncos. And when they put that together, the best defensive units in the competition struggle to hold them. So it is really going to test our resolve on the weekend. The next couple of weeks, if Luai is out, well, I don't know what those scans are going to show, and Fainu's out, and we've got a couple of injuries, and blokes maybe being needled up and playing not 100%, it'd be terrible to see that positivity within the squad start to disintegrate because they're not getting reward for the effort and they're slipping down the ladder a little bit. And it could happen. It could happen despite the fact we are probably, middle of the road team now. So that's going to be a big thing for Benji and his coaching colleagues and the senior players to keep that positivity whilst the club goes through a bit of adversity.
Yeah, I think Saturday is going to be a really big test, as you said, Steve. The one favourite, I don't think the Broncos have been that consistent this year. I think they've been a little bit up and down.
They have the potential.
So if we get, they're a fantastic football team. But if we get them on an off day, which they've shown a number of already this season, then that will make things a little bit easier next week. But going into a game where Luai's missing, going into a game where we've been hit with injuries, it's a really tough game. And you're exactly right, Steve. This is a game that Benji needs to be able to get them up for. I don't expect we're going to win this game, but not getting blown off the park, not having 50, 60 points put through us is really important. Being able to compete, being in the game with when you hit that 60-minute mark. Now, I don't mean being in front, but being in touch at that 60-minute mark, I think is really crucial this week. These are all things we need to see from this club to show that we're moving forward. And it's not necessarily a win next weekend that we need. It's the way we play that's really important, I think, and will tell us most about what sort of side we have this season. Whether that camp up to Queensland really bonded the guys together and they're willing to get into the grind and fight for each other in a game that's going to be a really tough game.
Yeah, it will be.
So I just looked it up. Sorry, I just looked it up on the phone. And when do we play? We play Saturday. So early in the week, like tomorrow and Wednesday, is supposed to be like 50, 60 mil falling up there, and then it's going to dry up beautifully and be hot and dry by the Saturday.
It's a little bit like how like if you looked at I don't know if this is the case, but you have Travojevic is out for Manly for 4 weeks. Who do they play on the first game back? It's going to be West Tigers. It's like the weather gods. We're going to play the team, as Gary said earlier, the team that has the muscle, the slow lumbering forwards that smashes down the middle in torrential rain. Who do we have? The Warriors.
Yeah, and you have a look. We've got the forward pack that is one of the quickest forward packs this weekend. Who are big and fast, something we've always struggled to deal with.
Exactly. Now, there is something else that we need to do, and that is to put a call out to the religious leaders of southwestern Sydney to come together at Campbelltown Stadium and maybe get in a prayer circle or, have some sort of ceremony, because there is a curse there, isn't there? We just can't win at Campbelltown, Gary. What is it about Campbelltown where we get out there and exciting, and it just doesn't seem to happen?
Honestly, I can't. Like 2 2-point losses there this season already. Like, I don't know what it is.
It's cursed. We need to be honest, exercise the spirits.
It was quite miserable out there at times last night, and again, there was 12,000 people out there at 6:15 on a rainy night. The crowd, that's a decent crowd for those conditions that we had last night. And again, they all walked away with a loss. They deserve some reward soon. We need a win out there soon, because I think their crowds over the last 12 months have been really strong. And I think last night would have been a really good crowd as well, only the weather scared a few people off.
More often than not, I'm walking across that railway bridge with a negative feeling in my stomach.
Yeah, it's very frustrating, especially when there's heaps of Warriors fans walking across there with you.
Yeah, there were a lot of Warriors fans. Didn't have the religious leaders of Southwest Sydney at the ambush event, Steve. You had a different special guest. You had Brent Naden. How did the event go?
We had a great event, Joel, and Brent Naden was just unbelievable. Gary interviewed him, as Gary does most of our interviews, and he did a great job, but he was able to do a great job because Brent Naden just wanted to be there and tell stories. And what a great storyteller he was. He was articulate, he was intelligent, he was excitable, he was funny, he was emotional. All the cliches, they're all there. Like I threw a question to start it off as a bit of a joke, saying to him, so come on, you got to tell us that you're amongst friends here. Were you secretly a little bit happy that Olam's retired? Gives you a run into first grade. And he was talking about how he was almost in tears because he loves the bloke so much, and he's such a great team man. So yeah, it was a great event. We had probably had about 50 people there at the event, and as always, it was good fun. We had some giveaways, and everyone had a good time. So I just want to encourage people, if you're looking for something to do before a game, we don't do it every week, but when we do have an ambush event, come on down, because it's good fun, and to get access to a bloke like Brent Naden and just to be part of the way he spoke with us and engaged with us all was really something quite special. And so our next one's in a couple of weeks' time, Joel. It's at when we play the Knights. We're going to be watching the Knights game at West Ashfield, and so we'll have an event, about an hour and a half before kickoff.
Yeah, I do have to say, Brent Naden is dead set the easiest interview I've ever had to do. I've never had a guy you ask a question for and he'll speak for 2 to 3 minutes with jokes and anecdotes, and he was I know I just said anecdote, so
what's the antidote for a dislocated knee?
yeah, I did pick that up, but he was fantastic yesterday, and his sense of humour, I was really impressed with him yesterday. Spoke about being dropped to reserve grade, all sorts of really interesting topics, and how he reacted to that. Spoke about his family and having to come back to Sydney to give football another try, because I think it was his grandmother told him he couldn't live at home if he didn't come back and give football another crack, and getting out of boarding school because he ran to his grandmother and said he didn't want to move away from home, so they fought with his parents for him. Just such an interesting guy who was so engaged in what we were trying to do. I can't praise Brent Naden high enough after yesterday, and that comes after I've given him a bit of a hard time over the past 12 months. He was excellent yesterday.
You normally lose faith or favour in the players that you've interviewed, like after the interview. It was around the other way.
Yeah. Usually after talking to them, they usually convince me that they're no good. No,
And they leave.
He was. And leave. Yeah, pretty much. I don't think Hastings played another game for us after I interviewed him.
Yeah, Stefano.
He's actually a much stronger critic behind a microphone than he is, face to face. Oh, Gary.
Yeah.
What, you want us to invite a player to an ambush event, Steve, and have me bag them out? Is that what you're asking for?
No. I'm just making an observation. That's all.
And yet, Alex Seyfarth hasn't been available at all. Did Naden give any indication when he's coming back?
He's hoping for next week.
Great.
So he said the date circled is the following week.
Yep.
But he said, I've been knocking on the physio's door every day asking if I can come back. He said he's got to get a little bit more contact. So a little bit more contact at training, and then he's right to go. I think he wants to play next weekend, and it'll come down whether he gets the clearance to play from the medical staff at the club for next weekend. But yeah, it's either next weekend or the weekend after.
Yeah, well, there's going to be some spots to fill, so if we can get him back, that'd be good. But we'll discuss that further after the team is announced tomorrow, or will be today by the time the pod goes up. And we're all looking forward to the Eddie Otto midweek edition of the West Tigers podcast with Yachty's quiz.
Will he show up? We'll wait and see.
We'll wait and see. Nick,
has anyone heard from him? Did he actually get back to us today at all about this pod?
He's over in Perth talking to the North Sydney Bears Consortium about moving the West Tigers after our 2-point loss. You wouldn't lose any games if you were based in Perth, so that's where he's. It was on the red-eye flight, so we'll see how he goes with that. But I'm sure he will be here. The vodka Red Bulls post-loss would have worn off.
Declan missing as well after a loss. I know that was thrown up. That's becoming a bit of a thing, isn't it?
He's a fair weather fan. He's like a Dragons fan. He's only there when they're winning, Yeah.
And the last thing before we go, I think it needs to be pointed out the actual reason we lost last night. I think the Jordan curse is still hanging around. He predicted us for 3 games in a row last year, and he jinxed us then. We're going for 3 games in a row last night, and I think that jinx is still there. So last night's result is fully on the head of Jordan Prime.
I actually saw Jordan arriving, right, just moments before kickoff the other day, and he wasn't a happy chappy. I think he was giving it to his kids. He wasn't in the mood for footy, I can tell you. G'day, Jordan. Hope you're well, mate.
I wonder what's going to happen first. West Tigers will win at Campbelltown. West Tigers will win 3 in a row, or Parramatta will win a premiership. I think they're all pretty long odds of maybe ever happening. Maybe not in our lifetime.
We'll get them. We'll get 3 this year.
Will we? Okay, there it is, Steve. It's on the record.
And if we don't, it's Jordan's fault.
Yeah.
Jordan and Steve. He's joined the Jordan team.
That's a double jinx now.
Exactly. Thank you, boys.
Thanks, boys.
Cheers, guys.